I think that Abbey Sharp is just about to jump off a very steep health cliff. Roll the titles.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow in the stump.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As always, just a quick reminder that I'm now offering the SIBO, organic acid, stool tests and consult via my website. So if you have any health or digestive problems, then consider taking these tests, as they will provide a lot of very detailed information upon which you can start making informed decisions and then start getting your health back on track. And on that bombshell, to the video.
Why is it so hard to find someone to help me? Why does everyone just not even believe this is real? I can't even imagine. Honestly, I do not know how this is going to end.
The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Secondly, it is violently opposed. And then thirdly, it is accepted as self-evident. This is the same for all illnesses and diseases, Abby. Look at Lyme disease and chronic fatigue and how long they took to become self-evident and for mainstream medicine to acknowledge them. You need to keep this in the back of your mind when approaching certain medical professionals. They may be at stage 1 or 2 in terms of thought process, and you shouldn't get despondent by this. Often we can't control people's knowledge or level of understanding or beliefs, so if your doctor or healthcare professional is not supporting or helping you, then you need to take ownership of the situation and see somebody who does have knowledge or an understanding in that area. Getting frustrated in the situation is only going to increase anxiety and worsen the symptoms in many people.
Now, in case you guys don't know, a quick little recap. Back at the beginning of 2021, I was diagnosed with SIBO, and SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Now, there are a lot of potential causes of SIBO. Most people tend to get it from a really bad bout of food poisoning.
That is quite a generalization there. It can develop from many different sources, so things like antibiotics, post-infectious IBS, constipation that causes bacteria from the colon to migrate into the small intestines, gut and transit time issues, food intolerances and sensitivities, other medications, stress, and so on. There are many root causes, and it has never been established that food poisoning accounts for a large proportion of these cases. And in fact, in my practice, I've seen thousands of people over the last 4 years or so, and I would say very few of these have developed SIBO from food poisoning. The vast majority of people that I see develop SIBO after a course of antibiotics or if they were following a particularly poor diet.
In my case, it's theorized that I actually got it from doing 4 rounds of antibiotics, from having back-to-back cases of mastitis 5 times.
Not 3, not 4, but can you dig it, sucker?
When I was pumping for baby E.
In this situation, I think it's reasonable to assume that Abby had good digestion, took a lot of antibiotics, and then her digestion fell apart.
Now, I tried to treat it earlier this year, and while I felt amazing during treatment, unfortunately, my treatment and medication options were limited because I was breastfeeding, so it just was not strong enough to eradicate it for good.
Again, this is another assumption here, but there could have been a couple of issues at play. So Abby said, well, taking the antibiotics, she felt good, so they were obviously working. So it might be the case that the antibiotics worked, but that Abby failed to address the underlying mechanisms which allowed the SIBO to start in the first place. You can usually get rid of SIBO very quickly with antibiotics or antimicrobials, but if you had gut motility issues alongside the SIBO, then if you don't address these, then the SIBO is likely to come back with a vengeance very quickly. Antibiotics or antimicrobials are only one small piece of the overall puzzle for many.
Now that I've weaned, the bitch is back.
Back, all right.
And I'm gonna kill that mother bacteria.
Again, the bacteria may only be part of the problem here.
So let me take you along on my journey.
Yes, love that journey for me.
First, we need a baseline, and that means doing the god-awful SIBO breath test again. If you remember from my last video, this means 2 whole days of eating nothing but chicken, eggs, white rice, white bread, oil, and clear broth.
And it's even more brutal for vegans and those following plant-based diets, because these are usually limited to white rice, tofu, and also white bread.
No fiber, no spices, no coffee. My life.
24 hours of pain, maybe a little bit more perspective here, Abby.
kill me. So to prepare, I did some meal prepping and I made some big batches of chicken and big batches of rice and broth. So for 2 days, I had toast with eggs for breakfast. I had chicken and rice in broth with some bread for lunch. And then I had some rice with chicken and bread for dinner.
It's absolutely not fun, agreed. Can we move on now?
But I was just desperate to get through that damn test. And so we meet again. Well, let's do this. That does not feel like it's working. I hope I did that right.
If anyone is doing a SIBO test and is unsure of the correct procedures, then I will add in some useful videos to watch in the description below. It is important that the instructions are followed correctly so that you avoid false positives and negatives, etc.
One eternity later.
That's so good. That tastes like so good today. Oh, I also just wolfed down an entire container of cantaloupe, so that went down. And I am having a peach and some yogurt and some mini muffins and some crackers as a pre-lunch snack because I kind of skipped breakfast. So yeah, just warming up for lunch. And it's gonna be a good day. Gonna be a good day today. That's not a real song. All right, let me drink my coffee.
A coffee addiction may be there, Abby. Just putting it out there into the universe.
1 week later.
Okay, so I just got an email with the results from my SIBO test, and not surprisingly, based on my symptoms, it's still positive. And it's still positive for the methanogenic bacteria, which is what I had predominantly last time, though just based on symptomology, there's also a little bit of suspicion that I also have some hydrogen bacteria as well. And actually this time it's even a little bit worse, which apparently is not uncommon with stubborn methanogenic bacteria. It can be really hard to treat and fully eradicate.
So 2 things here. One, it would be really useful for Abby to show her test results so we can all see the extent of the problem in numbers, although severity of symptoms is not always reflected in high numbers of either hydrogen or methane. And number 2, I don't like this assumption that gets pushed around on the internet a lot that methane is somehow more difficult to treat than hydrogen or hydrogen sulfide. Like I have said, I've seen thousands of people over the last 4 years for both hydrogen and methane dominant SIBO. But here's the kicker. If you address the underlying problems in the gut that cause the SIBO, and then you remove the bacteria from the gut, then I really don't tend to find that methane is really any more stubborn to remove. Yes, there are clearly some people that have a slightly more challenging time than others when getting rid of their SIBO, but generally speaking, for the vast majority of people that I see for SIBO, their SIBO is SIBO. On screen now you can see a recent patient of mine's methane SIBO test results. These were quite high and she simply took some natural supplements and rifaximin for a short period of time. And this is what she said when I talked to her about the process that we went through.
And where would you say your symptoms are as of today?
I have no symptoms at all. I haven't had even a bad day, like gut health wise, in a while. I feel like my stomach fully has been back to normal and better, probably.
Okay. And as a consequence of that, what sort of improvements would you say you've seen in your quality of life over the last sort of few weeks, months?
A pretty big one. I don't have to worry about I don't have to go hungry all the time. I don't have to worry about if I can't eat what someone made me. I don't have to be kept awake in stomach pain all night or just have to not eat before I go to work.
Okay. And what does your sort of diet look like at the moment? So you said predominantly plant-based. So yeah, what's diet like at the moment? Is it more sort of carb-based, more fats, more proteins?
I think my diet's pretty balanced, but I eat a lot of carbohydrates. I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and fruit is my all-time favorite thing. And I couldn't eat fruit when I was going through this. So I am back to eating as many fruits and vegetables as I want. I eat a lot of potatoes, which I couldn't eat, a lot of oatmeal. I can handle tempeh is one of my favorite foods, and lots of hummus and beans. So My diet's pretty diverse, but I definitely eat a lot of fiber and a lot of carbohydrates.
By the internet's logic, Melina would have had a much more difficult time in getting rid of her SIBO, as it was methane dominant SIBO, and she would have also really struggled to eat a lot of fibre after fixing the problem. Melina and many other patients that I have worked with demonstrate that a lot of the common materials cited on the internet are flawed. You can fix SIBO by eating any dietary pattern as long as you understand how to fix the problem correctly, and this applies to both hydrogen and methane. Don't get sucked into the internet's inaccuracies about SIBO.
So, the plan here is that I'm going to start a new biofilm disruptor. This is what they call like a phase 2 biofilm disruptor because it's a little bit more aggressive than the NAC that I took with my first 2 rounds of antibiotics. So I'm taking something called bismuth thiol complex. Bismuth? I don't know how to say that. Bismuth thiol bismuth.
My name is Sammy. They call me Sammy Sprinkler.
Thiol complex. I feel like I have to have a lisp in order to say that. And I have to take it for 2 months.
So let me just say this here. There is zero credible evidence anywhere that biofilm disruptors help remove SIBO any quicker, or more importantly, that these reduce relapse rates. These supplements are nothing more than a marketing push by many different companies, and they try and fearmonger people into buying these supplements because, of course, you can't get rid of SIBO without taking a biofilm disruptor. Like I said before, I've seen thousands of people for these types of issues, and I have never once recommended a biofilm disruptor. Please save your money, you do not need these supplements to fix the problem. And hypothetically, even if biofilms were an issue in SIBO cases, then you could just take a cheap digestive enzyme that will do the same hypothetical job at breaking down the extracellular polymers in biofilms. Don't fall for the marketing hype, the money is better in your pocket.
Which sucks because I really just want this whole phase to be over with and to be on the other side of feeling great and recovered. But here we are. And now that I have come to the end of my breastfeeding journey, I can finally start to take that.
So I've said this in many of the previous SIBO videos that I've done, that there are many antibiotics that you can take while breastfeeding when you have SIBO, as some of these antibiotics are non-digestible in the human body, so they shouldn't find their way into your baby's milk. This is an area though that clearly I'm not qualified to talk about, so please discuss with your doctor or gastro, but you don't always need to wait until after pregnancy and breastfeeding to fix these problems.
So I am very frustrated this week. I'm having a hard time getting the, appropriate protocol prescribed to me, like to actually get the medication. So basically, in short, the challenge is that rifaximin is the kind of go-to evidence-based antibiotic for treating SIBO. You would basically, everyone takes rifaximin if they're gonna do the antibiotic route. And I took that, 2 doses of it, but the evidence suggests that we actually wanna pair it with another antibiotic to really eradicate the SIBO.
Absolutely not. Only very isolated studies appear to suggest this. Again, only a small percentage of people that I have worked with have had to take a second antibiotic alongside rifaximin. And remember, you can take antimicrobials alongside rifaximin if your doctor and practitioner deems this necessary, so doubling up on antibiotics is not always necessary.
And the type of SIBO that I have, methanogenic dominant, best practice for that is to pair the rifaximin with something called neomycin, which is another antibiotic.
Again, there are quite a few options and variables available, so speak to your practitioner.
Now, here in Canada, neomycin has what we call like a black box warning. So that means that it comes with the risk of some potentially dangerous side effects. In the case of neomycin, those side effects are things like deafness, like ringing in your ears, C. diff, infection, etc.
This is why you discuss your particular situation with your doctor, and that comment about the C. difficile issue, any antibiotics have the potential to cause C. difficile infections, and this is why it's super important to use fermented foods or probiotics after you finish your antibiotics. These will reduce the risk that C. difficile bacteria will take hold in your gut.
Not surprisingly, a lot of doctors are very hesitant to prescribe it. And in fact, you can't even buy it at a regular pharmacy. You actually have to have it compounded because it's just very infrequently prescribed because it is potentially dangerous. Now, the evidence suggests that some of these terrible side effects are actually seen with long-term use and in IV use, not so much in these really short durations of use like what you would be doing with SIBO, but still, understandably, it freaks a lot of physicians out.
True, but there are many different options available, and some people may use neomycin combined with rifaximin as a last resort.
And since a lot of doctors don't actually know a whole lot about SIBO, and in fact, a lot of physicians and healthcare professionals don't even acknowledge that SIBO is a real thing, they're understandably hesitant to prescribe anything that comes with these significant risks.
Again, this isn't me bashing on doctors, far from it, but many of these doctors are the same doctors who denied Lyme disease and fibromyalgia existed until the literature caught up. The good thing about SIBO is that things have changed massively over the last 5 years or so, and many more practitioners are aware of the SIBO problem now, and this knowledge will increase over the next 5 years and beyond. Unfortunately, this doesn't help for the people who haven't heard of SIBO, and they believe their doctor's blanket term diagnosis of its IBS, and there is nothing that can be done to fix the problem. Or it doesn't help those people who find out about SIBO on the internet, and then their doctor denies it's even a condition, and then they won't support their treatment. So please reach out to a practitioner who works with SIBO patients if you suspect you have SIBO or if you have a positive test result. You don't need to suffer unnecessarily.
So I've now spoken to 3 different doctors and nobody will prescribe me the drugs. And there's no point in me doing another round of rifaximin because I've done it twice and we've seen from my SIBO results and repeating them that it didn't work. It just came back, and in fact it came back a little bit worse.
Again, we will have to take what Abbey is saying at face value, but equally it could be that she wasn't taking a strong enough dose. Many doctors prescribe 500 to 1000 milligram of rifaximin a day. The literature suggests 12 to 1600 milligram per day, and most of the doctors that I partner with in the UK prescribe 1600 milligrams per day, as this appears to be very therapeutic for many, regardless of whether a person is dealing with hydrogen or methane. But again, coming back to my point, Abbey has multiple options, and her options are not just limited to rifaximin and neomycin. There are alternative antibiotics such as metronidazole, and also many natural antimicrobials available in North America.
And I actually spoke to a bunch of my RD colleagues from different provinces in Canada and the States, and it seems that, Ontario seems to be a little bit behind in our understanding of SIBO, and which is strange to me because the tests are run out of, Ontario and Toronto's major hospital, Mount Sinai. I even called Cedars-Sinai, which is in LA, where the doctor there is kind of like the godfather of SIBO, but they were willing to take me on as a patient, but they'd only see me in person, not virtually. And honestly, I can't just fly to LA to get a prescription.
Abbey is obviously referring to Mark Pimentel, who is one of the world's leading authorities on IBS and SIBO. But I tell you what is really surprising here, she makes a video that is nearly 20 minutes long talking about how hard her problems are, yet when one of the world's leading authorities on SIBO says, "Come to our clinic and we will prescribe the antibiotics," Abbey's response, "I couldn't possibly do that. If I'm suffering as bad as Abbey makes out in the video, then I'm getting on a plane and going to see one of the world's authorities on SIBO. Period." Alternatively, if there are genuine issues with money, flying, childcare for Abbey and so on, then go to the Aero Diagnostics page. These are one of the main manufacturers of home SIBO test kits in North America. Put in a call or email to them and ask them for a list of doctors or practitioners in your area that specialise in SIBO, and then pick up the phone and call a few of these to see who can help you in this situation. Getting frustrated and making YouTube videos is not going to help you in this situation.
So this has been a humbling experience and definitely evidence that, there's definitely some challenges and gaps in our healthcare system. It's an amazing healthcare system and I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so grateful for free healthcare here in Canada, but it's not without its challenges in getting timely, effective care sometimes.
Correct, but this is the same in many different countries around the world. And if you are not getting the support that you need, then you need to take ownership of the situation and become very proactive to help yourself. Unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, not everyone is going to be dealt with correctly by the first doctor that they see. Expect that you may need to speak to a few different doctors.
So anyways, I'm going to keep pressing on and just hoping I can find a healthcare professional who will help.
Hope will do nothing here. You have to be proactive.
I'm so frustrated. I'm just so mad and nervous that I'm gonna go through this whole exercise of even taking this biofilm disruptor, which is an expensive medication to begin with, and I'm not going to have anyone to support me in this journey. Like, you would not believe how many people, how many dietitians, colleagues of mine that I've spoken to who have had SIBO or have SIBO, or who deal with patients who have SIBO every day, and they cannot find practitioners and doctors to support their care.
Again, biofilm disruptors, Abby, will do little to help you save your money. And if you ever watch this video, I would be more than happy to guide you through the process, so reach out to me. My contact details are in my description below.
Why does nobody believe this is real? Like, we have a diagnostic tool run out of Canada's top hospital, and while the specificity isn't perfect, in the hands of a skilled practitioner, it's a pretty great tool. It is just so archaic that, so many doctors are just dismissing this as naturopathic woo. We have research on this. We have research suggesting that like 6 to 15% of asymptomatic healthy people are affected by SIBO, and that it could be as high as like 70 to 80% of people with IBS. You would think that with those kind of numbers, every research lab and pharmaceutical company would be clamoring to find a foolproof cure.
But you assume that everyone views this with the same urgency as you. I see this all the time. People who have SIBO and they were told by their doctor for 20 years that it is IBS and there is nothing that can be done. And lo and behold, they take a test, they take rifaximin or natural antimicrobials, and they resolve their underlying problems, and many of their symptoms resolve or go away completely. Getting frustrated by the system is not going to help Abby in this situation. It will just make her symptoms worse through anxiety. She just needs to be proactive in the things that she can control, namely getting on that plane or researching specialists in Canada.
I'm normally so proud to be part of the evidence-based wellness community, but it's times like these I fully understand why people need to seek out alternative practitioners or healthcare when there's so much friggin' red tape to even people acknowledging when there's a problem. I feel so let down by the system. It should not be making me more sick to try to get better.
I understand this just as well as most, but frustration and having the victim mentality, despite being justified, is not going to help here. If you find yourself in this situation, you have to roll up your sleeves and take ownership of your own health. Nobody is going to do it for you. If you want to fix the problem, then you will. There are many experienced practitioners in every corner of the planet.
Okay, so update. I was finally able to find a doctor who's well-versed in methanogenic SIBO to help me, prescribe the right protocol so that I can really just put this to bed and finish this off and do it right. So she was very helpful, of course, but she also scared the living out of me because she made it very clear that she really could only prescribe the neomycin once. And that of course is to help reduce the risk of any of the dangerous side effects and antibiotic resistance. So basically what she told me was that if I didn't go kind of all in on this and literally do everything in my power to eradicate the bacteria this round, that I may have no other option but to do the elemental diet.
This is absolutely not true, and there are many different choices in this situation. Elemental diets, while they will reduce symptoms very quickly, tend to have much higher relapse rates because not only are you starving bacteria in the small intestines, you are also starving bacteria in the colon, which can have a direct impact on transit times and also gut motility. I have never once recommended the elemental diet, nor would I. There are many better alternatives, and not eating for 3 weeks comes with many challenges during and after for the patient. The problem in these situations is that when you are battling these types of issues, you are much more susceptible to making rash decisions out of frustration. Don't fall into this trap, as you will potentially create much bigger issues further down the line.
And that is literal torture. And I'm not sure I'm mentally prepared for that. It's literally a diet of amino acids to help starve off the bacteria for 2 weeks. I mean, all of this is about weighing, the risks and benefits, and I'm not sure that the benefits outweigh the risk to my mental health.
Agreed, so don't do it. Choose the much better alternative options available if the neomycin fails to work.
Especially as somebody who came from an eating disorder background. Like, there are a lot of people who I would say the elemental diet is contraindicated for, and I'm just gonna throw myself in there and say, yeah, not for me.
I think the vast majority of people should exclude themselves from this option.
Because I want to do this properly, I reached out to 2 of my colleagues who specialize in SIBO to really help review my protocol and offer any other evidence-based tips or suggestions when it comes to supplements throughout this journey.
My concern with what Abbey is saying here is that she says she has friends who are SIBO specialists, but not one of these could recommend a doctor for Abbey to speak to. This is slightly worrying.
So I just got off the phone with 2 colleagues of mine back to back who are of course so helpful. And there seems to be some solid consensus here on what I need to do in order to give myself the best chance of success. And I have to say that, I'm a professional, and even I feel so overwhelmed with everything that I have to do and I have to buy and I have to get, and it's I'm a little stressed out over it, so much so that I was feeling quite queasy. I had all the digestive distress following the call. Coming out of me like lava! Which is generally what happens when I feel anxious.
Again, it really doesn't need to be this dramatic. Speak to someone who understands the process and will guide you through it. Anyone who is trying to load you up with expensive unnecessary supplements, etc., is probably not the best person to guide you. You have to question their motives.
But yeah, once you get into the world of functional nutrition, it's like you're unpeeling this never-ending onion. There's just so much to unpack, and none of it is black and white. There isn't a gold standard here for treatment, and a lot of it is, trial and error, and it's grounded in more clinical experience and in science, but not actually really good quality research yet. And that's honestly just because the research hasn't caught up yet. Not in the pharmaceutical world, and definitely not in the world of nutrition and lifestyle recommendations and herbs and supplements or anything like that. I really think we're on the cusp of knowing so much more about the gut microbiome and SIBO specifically, and give it 5 years and doctors are gonna be diagnosing SIBO daily, and we're gonna have a lot more evidence to support the use of specific protocols. Right now, for the most part, this is really just a risk-benefit analysis every step of the way.
Again, Abbey can't control any of this, so it's wasted energy getting frustrated by the environment that she finds herself in. If she had invested all of this time that she put into the YouTube video and letting herself get frustrated, then she could have put in some good quality research, found practitioners with good sensible advice for her to follow, and she would probably have already been well into the treatment cycle by now.
So the way I feel about SIBO and nutrition or supplements is a lot like how I felt when I was going through IVF and infertility. The online infertility and IVF community is huge, and they're very vocal about, take this specific supplement, this helped me conceive, or cut this food out of your diet, or don't have caffeine, or don't have alcohol, or make sure you're having a pineapple a day, or whatever. And like with SIBO recommendations, a lot of these things aren't necessarily grounded in research or really heavily evidence-based. A lot of the recommendations might be based more on the role of a nutrient or a supplement in isolation, but how much of those things or exactly how well they're going to improve outcomes in real life, for the most part, we might not know.
Exactly, but don't listen to Joe blogs on the internet then. You had the world's leading expert on SIBO saying come to our clinic, and instead of doing this, you chose a much more convoluted process.
And in a lot of cases, I would argue, or at least I would bet, that they probably don't make a huge impact in isolation. But you know what does have a huge impact on health outcomes? Your mind, especially when it comes to gut health. Your mental state has a huge impact on your physical well-being, especially when it comes to the brain-gut axis. So this is a really big connection when it comes to gut and digestive health. I know when I was going through IVF, as evidence-based as I was, my doctor offered for me to be part of basically an experiment, an experimental procedure. There was no studies on it, no research papers written about it, nothing had been presented at conferences about it. I was patient number 9. And guess what? In that case, it worked out for me. It gave me my son, when the reality is I was told that probably nothing else was going to work. So when I say something doesn't have evidence to support it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work or you shouldn't try it, but you do need to weigh out the risks and benefits of these kinds of things and ask yourself some really important questions.
Amen, but be guided through the process by a practitioner who at least deals with this problem on a daily basis.
Like, I'm gonna have to make myself a schedule right now with all the different medications and supplements and when I have to take them, and set alarms on my phone because some things need to be taken twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. Some of them have to be taken before meals, with meals, separated. It's gonna be overwhelming for me. It's a lot for me to think about having to prioritize my schedule all of a sudden when I'm so used to prioritizing O's schedule and E's schedule and my husband's schedule and mine just having to like fit in somewhere. Plus, I don't wanna have to cut foods out of my diet. I don't wanna have to think about food that much. I don't want to obsess over food. I'm worried this could trigger some very dark thoughts. I just really hope that it works.
These are all things that you don't need to be stressing about, Abby. Go to my case studies playlist and listen to some of the people who I have helped. You very rarely need to modify people's diets. There are often a few supplements needed, but they certainly shouldn't be overwhelming. And if you are feeling overwhelmed by the process, then quite frankly, then you are probably not getting the guidance and advice that you need. Anyhow, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check out this one up here because I'm sure you'll find it equally interesting. And the only other thing that's left for me to say is to remember to look after your body because it's the only place you have to live. And I'll see you next time.